This episode of Film Riot is brought to you by FreshBooks. They fresh to death! Welcome to Film Riot Mondays. Today we have an interview for you guys with the director of Dead Rising, which is about to come out. Zach is a friend of mine. He's been on the show before, always has great things to say, and this is no exception. He had some great stuff to say about the project and just advice on being a filmmaker. So let's get to it. Just to jump into it, how many features have you shot now?
This is my third feature, and they're all kind of different terms for feature. My first one was, a sci-fi TV movie. The second one was a VOD movie, and this one's a digital release to be consumed completely online. So they're all feature length, but they're all kind of different, going different places.
Yeah, so Dead Rising, it's being released like episodic, right?
It's kind of going to be both. Like we did this really interesting thing where it's 2 hours long, but it's 9 sections that can be watched end to end completely as one piece, or they can be digested individually. And narratively, we came up with a little trick kind of every break that kind of makes it so it doesn't feel weird either way, which I think would be really cool, because it's basically giving the audience the choice as to how they want to watch it. On some platforms, it'll be episodic. On some ones, it'll have commercials, but just be one long piece. And maybe in other places, it'll just be in a movie theater. So
that's awesome. Jumping into like your process for this most recent film, what was prep like for you on this? Because it is coming from something that a lot of people love and already exists. So how much did that come into play with your thinking about telling the story?
Quite a bit. I mean, we prepped the movie for 4 or 5 weeks, which was pretty fast.
Yeah, it's really fast.
And we were kind of still working on the script, as you always are, kind of finding all the different things that you can or can't do. As soon as you start hiring all your key departments, everyone's coming with lots of new ideas, especially in Dead Rising, where it's known for having all these crazy combo weapons, for having very specific types of like character zombies, and figuring out all the different kinds that we could or couldn't do. And we're going to shoot this zombie apocalypse because we can't take over every city street.
Right.
And a lot of just saturating the crew with the game, because we really wanted this to be a faithful adaptation, because it takes part within the franchise of Dead Rising. So right. There's been 3 games, and this movie takes place in between the second and third game, so it's part of the same kind of story. And so we had like the Xbox right in the production office, and we had photos of all the different Dead Rising games and all of the different weapons like all over the office, and so there would always be someone there hacking zombies to bits or running them over or something on a big screen TV while we were prepping it.
So in prep, as a director, what was like your main focus? What was the main thing you were working on in prep?
Well, the thing in prep is like you're kind of the needlehead that every single decision has to be going through. So every single department is working on what they need to be doing, but eventually you kind of have to come through and make sure they're working in the right direction, or they're presenting their ideas to you.
Right.
So you're kind of constantly switching. It's like, okay, we're going in, we're talking about wardrobe for an hour. Okay, now we're going to go talk about weapons for an hour. Okay, now we're going to go talk about how we're going to get 200 extra zombies for this day. Okay, now we're going to talk about the budget and where we're way off. Okay, now we're going to talk about this. So you're kind of like every hour you're going and having a completely different conversation. And that's kind of the fun of it. The stress of it is that all of my work for prep, all the shot planning, all the kind of prep of how we're going to shoot it, how we're going to block it, how we're going to figure out the actual kind of technicalities of shooting every scene, there's no time for that. So you kind of have to find your own time all around all these other meetings to do kind of my own prep.
So in pre-production, it sounds like your job is a lot of just making sure everybody's on the same page and making the same movie instead of a bunch of little movies being made all around.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that that's kind of the director's job, is that making sure they're all making the same film, because you've got the composer who's making a certain style of music, the DP who's shooting a certain style of show, the writer who's writing a certain style of dialogue, the actors who are, the wardrobe. Every single person is trying to create a style. You're the only person who kind of can make sure all those styles are in the same movie. Because if you have really happy music with a DP who's doing something that's really somber with, really cartoony clothing, like none of those will all work together. Most of the time that's really clear. But sometimes you'll go into a meeting where someone will have made a choice or brought a prop or done something that doesn't fit. And what works really well, instead of just saying, "No, you idiot, it should be blue, not red, what are you doing?" and like screaming at them, and not, it's much, much more important to kind of explain to them why it should be red instead of blue. Everyone else is going over here, and you just did this, which is going this way. If you explain to them why we're all going over here, then their next 10 decisions will all actually be in the right direction, rather than just making the decision for them.
Yeah, so it's just really important to have those whys behind every decision you make.
Yeah, so that they can, because you can never make all the decisions, and the more that everyone else knows what you're trying to achieve, they can come to you with way better ideas.
As far as challenges go, what were some of the biggest challenges on this production, as far as production wise, while you're shooting? What are some of the things that you came in and how you solved that?
It was some of the biggest action I've ever done. Like the finale of the film, we filmed over 2 nights, so 2 12-hour days shooting one giant scene. And I'd never filmed a scene more than like 6 hours. So like figuring out the orchestration of how you're going to film something for 24 hours that's this huge epic scene with hundreds of zombies and action and explosions, and kind of breaking it down into its tiniest pieces and trusting that when you assemble it all again,
you've got
it'll make sense. Is tough. Each film you learn a lot about the mistakes that you made, and I keep a list of every time I make a movie. At the end of it, I write, okay, here's all the things I discovered. And then I make a list. Here's all the things I completely screwed up. And I should always make sure to do like small things. Like this time I didn't cover my entrances and exits of scenes that well, or even shots. Like, okay, I'm grabbing this shot. I know I need this shot for this line. But if I had just had the actor walk into it and then walk out of it, which is a basic thing. You always get your entrances and exits. You always get have them sit up into the shot and then say their dialogue and then exit, just so that you always have the exits and entrances. Because when you're editing, that becomes so important.
And what about Shotlister on this? Obviously, you used it for the show.
Yeah, we used Shotlister, and we also used the new features for Crew Sync, which now allows you to sync the file with the whole crew as you're shooting.
Yeah, so if everybody has to have that account, or it's just one account?
Basically, we have 2 versions of Shotlister. Shotlister, which is just the basic app, which allows you to build and do everything. Mm-hmm. And we have Shotlister Pro, which has a few more professional features. So a Shotlister Pro user has to be the one who is the person editing it, but any Shotlister user, without being a subscriber, can receive the synced file. They just can't make any changes to it.
Oh, great. So if I have Shotlister Pro, I can just sync it out to everyone. Yep. That's great. I could have used that in my latest short film, because it was just constantly like reprinting or re-emailing or whatever. Exactly. Because it was just like, as the show went on, it was just so much changing, as I'm sure this did with how fast it was moving. So being able to sync out like that is awesome.
But we're also right now, this year, we've gotten a whole bunch of financing. So we're getting a Mac desktop version, an Android, and an Apple Watch version coming out. We're building them right now, so they should be ready just after the summer.
Yeah, the desktop version, that's thumbs up from me.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, especially because there's a lot of things you can do on the desktop that you can't, like selecting multiple shots and globally changing all of them, or duplicating things really easy and copy and paste and undo is like really hard to do on iOS, whereas that's built into Mac. So just all that, really that kind of large data management works better on the desktop.
Do you have did you have anything else you wanted to touch on? Because if not, I'll hit it up with the last question. We'll be good.
Yeah, I'm really excited by the film, and people should check out the videos I'm posting every day, because they're pretty fun. Yeah, kind of insights into the film, and I'm releasing one new thing that no one knows about the movie every day. And the film comes out on March 27th, and it'll be free. It's on Crackle. It's a really, really, really fun film, and really true to the game. I think any of the gamers who love that world are going to love the film.
All right, and I guess my last question would just be, now you've got a few films under your belt. You come from the DIY, just getting out there and getting it done. Up until now, like I was saying before we jumped on here, I feel like you're in the unique position of, being in the middle of that, so you kind of remember what that's like. So is there any bit of advice for up-and-coming filmmakers as far as getting out there, getting noticed, getting their work seen, or just perfecting their skills to get to a point of doing this type of thing?
Unfortunately, it's pretty simple, which is and it sounds like it should be a lot more complicated, but just doing it, just creating stuff, is pretty much the most important thing. And it seems like that would be easy, but you kind of feel like, okay, now it's time for me to do a bigger thing, and wanting to do that bigger thing, because that's really hard, can end up stopping you from making anything for quite a while. Years might go by. And what's really important is whenever you make something, people see that you're making something, and people will just start because you can't make a film by yourself. You have to make it with a group of people. It's a super collaborative art form. So by making stuff and creating things, even small things, people will be like, hey, that's awesome. Can I help out on your next thing? Or someone might reach out to you on YouTube and be like, hey, if you ever need music for your next thing, let me know. And And over time, just by continuously creating stuff, you'll kind of be growing a network and growing a profile. And everything will just, like, you always have to be putting yourself out there and going for that next thing, but never stop making things because you're going for the next step, because that'll always kind of end up biting you in the ass.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's been experiences where it's like I've looked back and be like, wow, I haven't made anything in like a year and a half, like, because I've been, you know, and by making I mean like I might be working on scripts and trying to get projects going and stuff, but just the process of creating something can slip by, and then you're kind of like, what am I doing? Like, I've kind of was in this to be making things, and then suddenly I haven't been. But it's kind of a contagious thing. If you're always making stuff that's going out into the world, it'll kind of bring the world back towards you. Whereas if you stop making anything, you'll kind of end up becoming more and more isolated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% true. That's great advice. Thanks, man. FreshBooks makes things simple, but their specialty is to make your life easier when it comes to invoicing, getting paid, and tracking expenses. If you are doing freelance work of any kind or have a business of any kind for that matter on the side or full-time, you need to know about FreshBooks. It's an online tool and the absolute easiest way to get all your accounting done super fast. Everyone dreads doing stuff like sending invoices and getting your numbers straight, but that's where FreshBooks makes it really simple. Your clients can pay you online, your expenses are automatically tracked as you spend, and all the little details about cash flow are in one place, so you always know where you stand. It'll even let you see the full history of any invoice, so you'll know if your client has looked at that invoice or not. So head over to freshbooks.com/FilmRiot and don't forget to enter FilmRiot in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Logo.
So that's it for today. Big thank you to Zach for taking the time to chat with us. And speaking of Zach, my suggestion of the week is going to be Zach's YouTube page. He's been doing a daily blog leading up to the release of Dead Rising. A few days left on that, but he's put out a bunch of great stuff, some on color grading, some on the score of the project. So check that out right here. And until next week, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.